Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Mason. I'm an attorney with the Department of Procurement Services, and I'm here today to introduce our workshop on procurement fundamentals. Our first order of business is just to review a couple topic areas that we're going to go over today. That would be our mission statement, some of the laws that govern our procurement process, some common procurement terms that you may have heard already. If you haven't, you'll hear them now. The different types of procurement that we have, our certification, contract monitoring and compliance procedures, as well as programs and bid incentives, how our DPS website works, and then at the end we'll do some questions and answers. If you have any, if I'm able to answer it, I will. If I don't, I can always follow up with you. I'll hand out some business cards at the end of the workshop. Our mission statement. Our mission statement is we are the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the city of Chicago. We pledge to work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. Integrity, public trust, and the law are our guiding principles. We are the contracting authority for over 40 city departments. Where they are not able to contract on their own by ordinance, they go through the chief procurement officer who has purchasing authority. There are two laws that we use to govern our procurement process. The first is what we call the Municipal Purchasing Act. The citation for that act is 65 Illinois Compiled Statutes. That's what the ILCS stands for. 5810-1. This is the state statute that governs procurement. And then we have the Municipal Code of the City of Chicago, and Section 292 of the Municipal Code of Chicago is all the Chief Procurement Officer's authority and those things that fall under procurement. DPS provides, when you get a bid package for contracting, at the beginning of that bid package is a checklist. The checklist basically states those items that are required in response to a bid. Bidders should always review this checklist and the documents that are required for submission, and you should be sure to provide any information that is requested. Do not just rely on the checklist, but if in the bid document itself it says these items are required in response to our bid, then those must be presented as well. So you have to read the bid package thoroughly. Procurement terms. Some of the terms that you will hear: contract. Contract is the written agreement that a vendor has with the city of Chicago, and it provides all the terms and conditions and provisions for the procurement of either the good or the services. There are a number of different types of contracts that we have. You will see bid package. The bid package is that set of documents that contains all the information that are required in response to the bid and that would ultimately make up your contract. The addendum. Addendum is an actual change to the city's requirements in the invitation to bid in what we call a request for qualifications, or a request for proposals. The addendums are issued by the Department of Procurement Services, and those go out to everyone who has picked up a bid package or a solicitation package. An amendment or modification is a change to the actual agreement. It changes the terms and conditions of your contract, and there are several forms of amendments to contracts. When you see construction contracts, that change or modification is called a change order. Bids. The majority of the contracts that go out from procurement are what we call competitive bids. The other competitive forms of solicitation, but not a competitive bid, are requests for proposals and requests for qualifications. The requests for proposals are typically used when we have a new project and we need professional services. A request for qualifications is used when we need vendors who possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in a specific area. The types of procurement: we have small orders, we have competitive bids, requests for proposals, requests for qualifications, those three were previously mentioned, and we have what you call job order contracts. Small orders. We do small orders for procurement of goods and services with a value of less than $100,000. The Municipal Purchasing Act does not require that these solicitations be done through competitive bid or public advertisement. So quotes can be solicited for these by telephone, fax, or written quotations. We post them on DPS's website. They are first solicited to MBE, WBE vendors, and MBE, WBE, if you don't all know, stands for Minority Business Enterprises and Women Business Enterprises. The compliance for those are required for bids that are over $10,000. We have our competitive bids. The competitive bids are for solicitations that are equal to or over $100,000. The Municipal Purchasing Act does require that these be advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper daily in our classified section. They will also be on Procurement's website and the bid and bond room here in City Hall. And this solicitation period usually occurs between 10 to 30 calendar days. Some bids require a deposit to be made. That's a determination that has to be made through the department, depending on the type of solicitation that it is. We have pre-bids. Sometimes there's what's called a pre-bid conference, and with that there may be a site inspection if it involves like a work location and you need to see what that location looks like before you can make a proposal. These are optional. They're not always included, as I stated before, but part of the things that occur in the pre-bid is you review your specifications, you address any concerns that you may have with the specifications. If you have any questions and you need answers, those will be brought up during the pre-bid. They always strongly recommend that you attend pre-bid conferences when there are one. Depending on what's asked at the conference, what questions you may ask, the answers may be provided in the form of an addendum if there's a change to the terms of the solicitation following that, or it just may result in a clarification. Also in the pre-bid, if there's not a pre-bid meeting, bidders are encouraged to review the specification and contract documents during the bid solicitation period. And you can contact the Department of Procurement Services administrator, which you will see in the bid advertisements documents if you have any questions about the bid. Usually the solicitation, well, not usually, always the solicitation documents will tell you the location of a pre-bid conference if there is one. The time, it will tell you who the contract administrator is with DPS. So there will not be any confusion about that. Bid documents. With our bid documents, you have to fill in all the information that is required in the documents. Certain bid documents have to be submitted and executed with the bid. If not, your bid can be rejected. So look for that specific language for any documentation, whether or not your bid can be rejected just by not submitting those documents. You have to sign and execute it, and it must be notarized. Bid submittals. There may be a bond required or a deposit. A lot of times you see bonds with construction contracts for some of the bids. That will not exceed 10% of the contract amount, and it has to be submitted in the proper form. The documents will let you know that cash is not acceptable. Bids must be timely on the bid opening date. Your solicitation document will say when you have to provide the bid, the date, and the time. It will say prior to or on that time. For example, 11 a.m. bids are due. You have to submit your bid prior to 11 or at 11. Anything after that time will not be accepted. Bid openings, the day, Monday through Fridays, no major holidays. Time, as I said, 11 a.m. They will be open here in the bid and bond room. They are open, they are read out loud, and the bids are tabulated. You can always go to Procurement's website and you can see the tabulation of the bids We review them for accuracy and completeness, and they're available for you to review for about 24 hours after opening. The award process. The determination is made regarding the bidder's responsiveness and responsibility for award. If you ever take a look at the Municipal Purchasing Act, it goes to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Responsive means that you responded to everything that the documents require. Responsible means that you're actually capable of performing the services. A recommendation of award is made. Acceptable bids are packaged together. The bid and contract documents are routed through the signature and approval process. Any performance and payment bonds, insurance, and funding agency concurrence for award are also obtained. Funding agency concurrence, there may be federal funding involved in the contract, so you would have to contact the federal agency and get concurrence on that. The contract, as I stated before, will be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, meeting the specifications of the city. Request for proposals. Another competitive solicitation, but not a competitive bid. It's what we use to solicit proposals to implement a new project requiring professional services. It's used when the city doesn't have in-house technical experience for things or experts or resources to implement projects or services. So the RFP, or the request for proposal, will define project objectives and scope of services, but they don't detail every aspect of that process. So you'll have a scope of services. You'll have in that document what's called required content. It will tell you everything you need to provide. It will ask you questions like, how do you intend to perform these services? What key personnel will you use to perform these services? So you're basically making a proposal to the city saying, hey, we have this level of expertise. This is how we propose that it will be done. These are the people we propose that will be involved in the project. These are the materials that are needed, something to that effect. It requires a detailed evaluation of the proposals by an evaluation committee. The evaluation committee will first determine whether or not you submitted the required content, and then they will do a more subjective evaluation of the materials. Low price is not a factor in requests for proposals, unlike in competitive bids where it's the lowest. The pricing is taken into consideration, but it's not the only factor. Award in this case will be made to the highest rated and ranked respondents. The next solicitation is the request for qualifications. This is what we use to solicit qualifications from companies who possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in a specific discipline. The way this works is that the city will pre-qualify a company based on their expertise. The companies that are rated highly qualified will go into what we call the vendor pool. From that point on, the city will issue what we call task orders, and we will get a proposal from those qualified individuals that have been placed in the pool. Evaluation and selection is based on qualifications and technical competence. For architectural and engineering, which is A&E, request for qualifications, there is no cost proposal at that time. A fee schedule will later be negotiated for the master agreement. This is most commonly used in our architectural and engineering situations and certain consulting categories. Job order contracts. Job order contracts are unique contracts. They're firm, they're fixed price, they are a form of a competitive bid. They're indefinite quantity contracts. They're specifically designed for a department's construction programs. We solicit qualifications from companies who possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in specific disciplines. These are not large construction programs. These are for small to medium-sized projects. Instead of bidding every small or medium construction job and developing plans and technical specifications, departments use a JOC. The JOC contract goes to one general contractor. Specific tasks are issued to that contractor. The contractor works with the city to develop or further develop any detailed specifications and to propose costs. These costs are based on what is called a unit price book. The unit price book already contains the various construction tasks that the city needs, a description of that task, a unit of measure, and a unit price for each task. That is what goes into the detailed specifications. Award to the general contractor offering the most favorable adjustment. That's how that contract works. There's adjustment factors. The vendor will bid an adjustment factor for normal working hours and an adjustment factor for work performed other than normal working hours. And the value of the job contract really depends on what the department's needed for and the budget that they have. Economic disclosure statements. This addresses the disclosure of ownership. It also addresses some key factors where there's questions about whether or not a vendor is capable of doing business with the city. There are some ordinances that will say if X, Y, and Z occurs, a vendor is not eligible to do business with the city. A lot of those questions are asked in the economic disclosure statement. Online completion of an EDS is mandatory for most of our solicitations. Sometimes they are not. You will be notified if they are not. In addition to the applicant, any legal entity that owns more than 7.5% interest, direct or indirectly, in the firm that's applying for the contract will also need to file an EDS with the City of Chicago. Certification. We have 6 types of certification. There's minority-owned business enterprise certification. There's women-owned business enterprise. There's business enterprise owned by people with disabilities. We have disadvantaged business enterprise, airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise, and veteran-owned business enterprise. And this in itself is a separate workshop to learn more information about the different certifications with the City of Chicago. Basically, the eligibility requirements for these is a business must be at least 51% owned and controlled by qualifying either minorities, women, veterans, individuals with disability, or disadvantaged individuals, depending on the type of certification that you're applying for. Businesses also have to be small businesses. They must be independent and viable. You can find all of the regulations regarding certification on the City of Chicago's website. The minority women disadvantaged participation. 292420 sets forth the city's minority-owned and women-owned business enterprise procurement program for all contracts other than the construction contracts. 292650 sets forth the MBE WBE program for what is called construction contracts. It will state what those goals are, whether it's 25 and 5 for non-construction and 26 and 6% for construction contracts. The 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 26, is what set forth the rules and regulations for disadvantaged business enterprises on federally funded projects. For each contract that is requiring MBE, WBE, DBE expenditures, those have to be towards goals only if the MBE, WBE, DBE is performing what we call a commercially useful function. And a commercially useful function is you have to be responsible for the execution of a distinct element of work in your contract, and you have to carry it out, but actually you have to perform it, you have to manage it, you have to supervise all the work involved or you can fulfill these responsibilities if you operate as a joint venture. Reduction, waiver, and good faith efforts. A contractor will not be entitled to a reduction or waiver of the goals in the contract during the performance of the contract, after substantial completion of the contract, or at the time of contract closeout, unless that contractor in writing makes a request to the Chief Procurement Officer for reduction or waiver. A contractor seeking a waiver or reduction of MBE or WBE goals must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the CPO that it has made good faith efforts to meet its MBE and WBE utilization goals. In every solicitation, you will find a document called Special Conditions. It will either be for a commodities contract, it will tell you if it's for a construction contract, and it will lay out what the rules are for MBE, WBE compliance, what the penalties may be if you don't meet those goals or request a waiver or prove to us that you have made a good faith effort to use the MBE, WBE requirements. contract monitoring and compliance. We have a compliance unit. They actually monitor the utilization of MBEs, WBEs, and DBEs that have been listed as subcontractors on a compliance plan. They ensure that you have complied with the Chicago Residency Ordinance. Also, equal employment opportunity commitments, if that applies in a contract. What the Chicago Residency Ordinance is it's a construction contract that's estimated at $100,000 or more and is funded by the city of Chicago. And in that construction contract, the ordinance requires that 50% of the total work hours have to be performed by actual residents of the city of Chicago, and 7.5% of the total work hours must be performed by project area residents. This is in an effort to make sure our citizens are employed, especially in various project areas. Equal employment opportunity. In order to promote equality of opportunity, this is for minority and female personnel on city-funded construction projects. We have an award criteria determination, and that's based on a canvassing formula that we insert into each of those contracts estimated at $100,000 or more. Bidders are invited to propose the minority and female employee utilization goals. There is a cap on there for canvassing purposes, but we do always encourage to utilize more than the cap. Ways to achieve compliance. The first way is the prime is an MBE, WB, or DBE themselves, the prime contractor. Or you can joint venture with an MBE, WBE, or DBE. You can subcontract out a portion of your work to one or more MBE, WBEs, or DBEs. You can purchase material that are used in the performance of the contract from an MBE, WBE, or DBE. Reporting requirements. Prime contractors are responsible for submitting monthly subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls, and waivers of liens. We also have programs and bid incentives. Programs and bid incentives are also a workshop in and of themselves. But just so you can have an idea of what our programs are, what bid incentives we have the Small Business Initiative Construction Program, the Mid-Size Business Initiative Construction Program. We have a non-construction Mid-Size Business Initiative Program, which is new. Our Diversity Credit Program. We have a Target Market Program that applies to non-construction only type of contracts. MentorProtege Program, and a phased graduation MBE, WBE program. We have several bid incentives in our contracts. Veteran-owned business and enterprises, veteran-owned subcontractor utilization, business enterprises owned by people with disabilities. We have an incentive for city-based manufacturers, city-based businesses, apprentice utilization, utilization of ex-offenders in the contract, and CPS graduates. We have the alternatively powered fuel vehicles, a mentor-protege program, project area subcontractor utilization, equal employment opportunity, and an incentive to encourage the utilization of MBE and WBEs. On our DPS website, you will find awarded contracts, modifications, payments made to vendors, bid tabulations, weekly bid opportunities, searchable MBE, WBE directory. Bid incentives are there, the regulations governing those incentives and other procurement processes, all at the City of Chicago's procurement website, as you can see here. Training, outreach, communication. That is our Facebook link, our Twitter link, YouTube link, where you can find videos such as the workshop that we're doing today. Other workshops that we conduct are also on YouTube. And also the City of Chicago DPS website. So that is all. I thank you all for joining us. I see we already have a question.
Yeah, so for services related to professional training and program management, would that fall under RFP or RFQ?
It can be either or. The thing about the RFP is usually the city has some idea of how they want the service to be performed. There's more of a detailed scope of services. They just look for the vendor's input a little bit further on how those services should be performed and the individuals that they would utilize. RFQ, not so much. They know that we need these services. We don't know exactly how they're supposed to be performed, so we're going to bring in these qualified individuals. We're going to say, here's a task order, this is what we need done, proposed to us. For example, a RFQ, I believe, was done for like evaluation and different testing programs that go for personnel and hiring. How do you get involved in the Mentor-Protege Program? So a part with the way the Mentor-Protege Program works is it's very specific to a contract. So with your solicitation documents, usually with a competitive bid, you would submit that I'm a prime contractor on this contract. I want to utilize this protege on my contract. You submit that agreement, and the procurement's website has a form, a sample form agreement that you would use. You submit that to procurement, the procurement specialist. They would forward that on to us, being the attorneys, and we will review to make sure it meets DPS policies for the Mentor-Protege Program. And it's usually for the term of the agreement. Yes.
You have an operator voice which you clients subcontract a portion of the work to one or more MBE, WBE, or DBEs. Do the MBE, WBEs, or DBEs, are they supposed to be registered with the city, or, you know, by, like, either female, or that they are an ethnic group of some type? Is that,
They are.
their names?
They are certified with the City of Chicago, or else they are certified with Cook County, where we have reciprocity.
So each of the subcontractors is certified.
Yes.
You realize that's 75 individuals.
Well, that it's contract specific. So usually you would see that the contract says 25 and 5. 25% of the dollar amount of your contract would go to minority. 5% has to be, you have to utilize 5% for women, businesses. You reach out to the assist agencies. The assist agencies. The assist agencies are different organizations that the minority and women and the different firms that are certified with the city or Cook County work with to find primes for certain contracts. And those assist agencies are actually provided in the solicitation documents. They're also on the Department of Procurement Services website.
Tell you that all 75, let's say, half are not certified with the city, nor will they get certified with the city, but they are MBEs, or they're minorities or women.
The city requires them to be certified.
And that requires, that costs like $250 or something.
There is a fee, a certification fee, yes. And there are a number of firms that are already certified with the City of Chicago. Any other questions?
I feel like the city's preferred vendor list.
The who?
The city's preferred vendor list. Is there a vendor list that you that you know that we have a preferred vendor list for certain services that are being contracted out?
I'm not aware of a preferred vendor list. Jackie, do you have?
The question so that people online can hear what the
The question was, does the city have a preferred vendor list? I'm not aware of a preferred vendor list.
And the requirement for city residents to build in the Chicago, that comes with construction,
The city residence ordinance,
public construction.
let me double check to make sure. Make sure that was stated correctly. the Chicago residency ordinance was the construction contracts, yes. Just want to make sure I'm not confusing it with city residents, like employees have to be residents of the city of Chicago. Yes, that was the Chicago residency ordinance.
So I'm the 51% of the business, my partner is I look at the,
I'm sorry.
I'm the 51% and my partner is the 49%. He lives in Memphis, I live in Chicago, is that what we problem? So we can really be contracts?
Well, the 51% goes to certification. So that's a separate component. That's how you become certified with the city of Chicago. So the qualifying member has to have 51% ownership, right? And they have to show independence and they have to show viability, meaning they make decisions in the company. The certification team looks at the contributions that you made to start the company. So it really doesn't have anything to do with whether you qualify for the contract. It has something to do with whether you're eligible to be certified. Mm-hmm.
I would be coming in as prime, non-target market person in a company. And so with that, that's the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think they can hear you online. So, excuse me.
I would be coming in as a prime non-target market company. And so in order to get a contract with the city, I would have to follow the compliance side of it. What else? Do I have to get registered? I can't become certified because I'm not woman-owned or anything like that. So what else would I need?
So as a contractor for the city, depending on what the solicitation is for, when you bid on contracts, you meet the requirements of the bid document. So you have to make sure you're meeting the requirements of the bid documents. And obviously, you have to respond to everything that's requested in the bid documents, and you have to be responsible. I mean, you're financially capable of performing the services. You have the personnel to perform the services. The special conditions, unless we determine that we have no goals in that contract, and that's determined that some research is done, the department works with procurement to see if there are any minority or women vendors who can also perform on this contract. If they determine that there are none, a contract may state that there's no stated goals. Then you won't have to meet those compliance requirements. However, the majority of our contracts, construction and non-construction, have stated goals. So if it says that you have to have 25% minorities on a contract and 5% minorities on a contract, you would reach out to the assist agencies. That's a part of the good faith efforts. You have to show that you've reached out. The assist agencies is one resource to say that I've tried to find these individuals who can perform on my contract. That good faith effort would go towards requesting either a waiver of those goals or a reduction of those goals. If the city determines no, there's a lot of qualified minority and women firms, you may not receive a waiver, you may not receive a reduction. So you have to meet those compliance goals. That's how they get smaller companies involved in city contracts.
Further this,
Mm-hmm.
the contract that I had, because I was a woman-owned business, I sold to a non-target market. And so, I know that
Can
there were.
I interrupt you for just a second? Anyone else have a general question?
Yes.
Because other than that, I'm gonna turn off the YouTube, because I need to make sure that.
Give me an example of bid bond or a deposit.
We'll come back to your question. Give me just a second.
Can you please give me an example of a bid bond or a deposit?
So a bond, if you have a construction contract, obviously they would want someone that's licensed, and then you have to be bonded. So the city will require a certain percentage of the contract or dollar amount in a bond. And in construction contracts, you will see a sample bond that the vendor has to fill out and provide to the city. And the deposit is just, again, if it won't be more than 10% of the dollar amount, but the city just may require that you have to put a deposit down for whatever reason for a particular type of contract. I can't always say. The department usually will let us know. It depends on the services that they're requesting. Somebody else had a general question. I can answer specific questions offline.